Good afternoon. How's everyone doing today? Well, good, good. I really want to thank you for being here to be a part of today's Issues Forum, which is Women in STEM, a gender gap to innovation. I think that you're in for what's going to be a great conversation. It's going to be very exciting. I'm Congressman Marc Veasey. I represent Dallas and Fort Worth in the U.S. House of Representatives, and I'm your honorary host for today's panel. Before we begin, and I don't see the ranking member here. The ranking member of Science, Space, and Technology, Eddie Bernice Johnson, who is from Dallas, she's going to have a few words a little bit later. But I want to begin the panel off by thanking the Intel Corporation first for being one of the industry leaders in the movement to inspire and equip our young women in the STEM fields. Through Intel's Global Girls and Women's Initiative and their She Will Connect program, they are making great strides to open up the doors of opportunities to become the leaders of tomorrow. Intel, thank you for your work in this important field and for sponsoring today's session. Well, this is a passion of mine, talking about STEM, and increasing STEM access is very important for the jobs of tomorrow and will help continue America's legacy of innovation. In order for the United States to maintain its lead in cutting-edge technology and competitiveness, we have to be able to create well-paying jobs to spur economic growth. And we must ensure that the next generation of young people are trained in the STEM fields. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are now approximately 5 million job openings in the U.S., the more than a decade, the most in a decade. However, many businesses are unable to find the workers that they need, the qualified workers that they need to fill these positions. Technical jobs in STEM are in high demand, but require specific training and education. And also for some of these STEM jobs, there are two different types of STEM jobs. You have the high income STEM jobs, and then you have the middle skilled STEM jobs. For the middle skilled STEM jobs, there's still a certain stigma that is related to those, but many of those jobs require STEM. This is especially true in the manufacturing sector, where technical efficiencies and innovation have created a market for highly skilled and trained workers. While manufacturers employ more than 12 million workers nationwide, according to some studies, there are nearly 500,000 of those jobs in manufacturing that go unfilled in this country. I believe that we have the opportunity to ensure that women, single mothers, new arrivals to the workplace have the opportunity to access these good paying jobs. The Department of Education has shown that graduates with degrees in those fields are likely to earn significantly more than those with non-STEM majors. But how do we ensure that our workforce is diverse and includes the talented women of color that should be at the table? Today we have a number of esteemed panelists from STEM and manufacturing sectors who will speak about their experiences in the STEM fields. They'll also talk about the challenges that they've overcome in STEM and the opportunities that they see for children in the future. Again, it's so important that we talk about this. You hear so often, especially with me being a member of Congress, the need for instance, more H-1B visas for the fields like computer scientists, engineers, researchers. And again, you hear so many of our manufacturers talk about the fact that these manufacturing jobs are not your mom and pop's manufacturing jobs. You need to have more than muscle. You have to have brains to work on the assembly line, and you have to be prepared. And the women that are on this panel, they're going to be able to talk about that. In addition, we'll also be joined by a second panel that will discuss the role that black female scientists played during our nation's race to put a man on the moon. And again, I want to thank the Intel Corporation for their collaboration on this panel and the work they're doing to promote diversity in the STEM field. And to begin, I'd like to welcome Dr. Natoki Ford to the stage. Dr. Ford currently serves as Senior Policy Advisor for the White House in the Office of Science and Technology Policy. She oversees the development of national initiatives to raise visibility and improve the image of STEM fields and careers. She completed her PhD in experimental pathology at Harvard, and was a postdoctoral research fellow at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. Previously, she spent time in Los Angeles, where she had the opportunity to work in film and television and served as a middle school teacher in an underserved community in Los Angeles. It's clear that Dr. Ford has the passion to talk about this subject and inspire our young people, and we can always use more of that. Dr. Ford, thank you for being here today, and turning it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Mic check. Is the mic on? Can you guys hear me? Awesome. So it's such a pleasure to be here to moderate this panel with this amazing group of Black women in STEM. And so before we begin and before I go into introducing each of our panelists, I want to get a sense of who our audience is. So do we have any college students here with us today? Okay, yes, two in the middle here. Excellent. And actually, those of you who are standing in the back, there are a couple seats sprinkled in the middle on both sides, so don't be afraid to come and take a seat if you would still like to. So we have a couple college students. How many of you are currently STEM professionals, so you are working in the STEM fields currently? And they skew to that side of the room, interestingly. Interesting, okay. So I assume everybody else is outside of STEM. And how many of you are early career, whatever your profession is, early career professionals? Okay, not too many. Mid-career, retired. Okay, a couple retirees in the back. And the last question, so we got a nice mix. Our audience is a good mix here. How many of you are parents in the room here? Okay, I knew we would probably get quite a few hands here. So this is a great group of people for us to have this conversation. So you heard a lot of great information about why this discussion on inclusion in STEM is so important for our nation, for our economy. I'm just going to share with you a couple other tidbits before I go in and introduce our esteemed panel. So 80% of the fastest growing jobs require STEM skills. That's 80%. Right now, women who are approximately half of the US population are 29% of the STEM workforce. And when I'm going to give you a historical perspective for Black women in particular in the science and engineering fields, in 1993, Black women comprised 5.7% of STEM science and engineering workers. In 2013, when this data was collected, it was 6.6%. So in 20 years, barely a blip of 1% in the increase of Black women working in the STEM occupations. So this conversation is critical, obviously, and I think that what we want to take away from this discussion is to both learn from these amazing women about what the work that they're currently doing, their pathway to do this work, what they have found to be effective in fostering inclusion, but also as you all who are parents, which was a fairly significant proportion of people in the audience today, think about your children. And think about these awesome role models that you have before you, and think about what you can do, because we need you. We need your kids to be the future innovators in this country. So you have a lot of things to keep in mind. And as we progress through the course of this less than an hour now that we have, we will try to take a few questions at the end. So people, please keep in mind the questions that you might have for this awesome panel. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to introduce the amazing women, hashtag Black Girl Magic, hashtag on fleek, okay? So we have joining us Regina Gray, the Director for Family Care and Global Innovation at Procter & Gamble. We also have Alicia Green, the General Manager of Information and Technology for Gas and Midstream and Global Corporate Functions at Chevron. Also joining us, Tonya Hallett, the Global Human Resources Director at Cadillac, or for General Motors. Valencia Macklin, the Director of Cybersecurity and Special Missions at Raytheon. Shawn Simmons, the Environmental and Permitting Manager at ExxonMobil. Okay, we have a big fan of Shawn. Got her cheerleading section here. Who else? Anybody else bring cheerleaders with them? No? Next time. Okay, yes. Also joining us, Adrienne Trimble, the Project General Manager for Corporate Responsibility at Toyota. Okay. All right. And last but certainly not least, all the way at the end is Barbara Wye, the Director of Strategy and External Alliances at Intel Corporation. So one more applause for all this black girl magic on the stage right now. So the first question that I just want to put out there, and each of our panelists I'll ask to go and try to keep your remarks like a minute or so, is to tell us a little bit more about your role in your company or organization, your journey to that job, and the skills that you acquired or what you did to acquire the skills to do the job that you're doing today. So let's start with you, Regina.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be up here with all these fabulous women. I am currently the Director of Global Innovation for our family care business for Procter & Gamble. I've been with the company for, louder, cannot hear me? Can you hear me now? Thank you. All right. I've been with the company now for 21 years full time. Actually, I interned with the company for 2 summers. If I think about my journey, I have a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering. I got it from North Carolina State University. When I think about my journey, there you go. Think about my journey. I really had 2 great parents. My father was a career military officer. My mother was an educator, and they saw that affinity that I had towards math and science and nurtured it. Nurtured it to the point where they gave me the opportunity and encouraged me to go to a boarding school for science in North Carolina, the North Carolina School of Science and Math, where I spent my last 2 years of high school and really honed my desire and affinity towards the math and science skills. And that's the reason what brought me to North Carolina State University. I got a chemical engineering degree and had a great mentor, the only black female that was in the engineering college, who really helped me steer to determine whether or not I wanted to do academia, whether I wanted to go into research and development, or where I ended up was in manufacturing. And I will talk more about that as we go further, but manufacturing within P&G is exceptional. I was able to see a diverse workforce come together, young and old, black and white, really be able to deliver the business results every single day. And that fun, fast-paced, exciting experience is what drove me to P&G, what drove me to manufacturing, and was kept me there for the last 21 years.
Good afternoon, everyone. Everybody hear me okay? So I will also echo Regina's comments that it's fabulous to be on a stage with such phenomenal black women, and I probably will speak for all of us saying that this is probably the most of being with people like us that we've had in a very long time. So it's always great to not be the only one anymore. So what brought me into STEM? So I guess, first for me, it was my love for math. I have always loved math. I also had encouragement from my parents, were both in the educational system. My father, 45 years in the Philadelphia school system, and my mother, 20 plus years as a school nurse in the Philadelphia school system. So that emphasis on education I learned at an early age from my parents, and it was very well nurtured. I have a mathematical and computational sciences degree from Stanford University. From there, I went into Chevron as a programmer. And one of the things that I really enjoyed and what helped me through was really looking at how information technology enables a company like Chevron in the energy industry, something that is so important to our world. And that's what really inspired me to stay within this field. Seeing the tangible effects of the hard-earned education that I have, what that can have on the world. As Regina mentioned as well, I think mentors play a very important role. I have had some very great mentors along the way. They have helped me with my journey to mature. I've been with Chevron for 25 years now, and through that time have been blessed to have many different roles in many different states, and also actually in countries. I actually spent 2.5 years in Bangkok, Thailand, working with Chevron. And so these types of fields really open up not only your academics, but then also your life in general and life experiences.
Good afternoon. Again, I have to echo how excited and honored I am to be here, to be able to speak with you, but certainly with this great panel of women. Um, my interest in STEM, it's very interesting. To start with my upbringing, I'm from a single parent household and the first in my family to graduate from college, and deeply rooted in faith, in confidence that I could do anything that I wanted to do. And so coming from Brooklyn, New York, I went to high school in Harlem. I had great educators that made a lot of opportunities available to me. And so I started out in STEM in high school. I was in a science and technology program, an honors program, but chose to pursue my undergraduate degree at Cornell University in industrial and labor relations. And how that I then got back into STEM or a STEM-related industry, the automotive industry, were for two things. During my undergraduate time, I studied abroad. And to know me is to know this path and this journey is that I'm one that will always take the road that is less traveled. I'll always accept the challenge of what one would say that little girl from Brooklyn couldn't do. And so I certainly wanted to have a career that would allow me global opportunities. I saw that with STEM companies. Those were the companies that were offering multinational experiences. The other thing, being a little girl coming from Brooklyn, single parent household, those companies paid a lot more money. So I chose to use my industrial labor relations or HR background to be a gateway opportunity to get into a STEM industry. And so, it does take knowledge of STEM. It does stretch, right, one. So if you're in communications or PR or HR or finance, right, you can certainly allow young people, young women, minorities to see that there's an opportunity still to pursue great opportunities in STEM industries. And so from there, I took an opportunity with General Motors because someone said that a young girl or a woman would be better in compensation or benefits, not in collective bargaining. So I decided to accept an opportunity in a foundry in labor relations, upstate New York, where I was the only African American who lived in the town and worked at the facility. And from there, I've had a great career, over 20 years now with General Motors. I've lived in Germany. I've been responsible for HR, for purchasing and supply chain. There's STEM in that, right? I'm now the Global HR Director for Cadillac, and I'm responsible for helping the leadership team to transform that brand as a standalone luxury brand to really step into being the true American iconic luxury brand. So that's my journey. I'll try to keep it, so I'm going into 2 minutes now, but that's my story.
Well, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? So contrary to what Hollywood may tell you, not every cybersecurity professional is a white male with no hygiene and no social skills that sits in a dark room and eats corn chips. So like every lady here, I am extraordinarily happy to be a part of this panel. I am the Director of Cybersecurity and Special Missions within our Intelligence and Information Services business at the Raytheon Company. So I have the great pleasure of working on phenomenal programs that protect our national security and our national interest. I started my journey, I had the privilege, and you shared this in terms of the home, two wonderful parents, but before Bring Your Child to Work Day existed, my father, who had been a Vietnam Air Force veteran and had become a defense contractor, got special permission, don't know how he did it, but he did. I was going to be a doctor, that's what I wanted to be, and my 8th grade teacher gave me a paper to write. Coincidentally, about that same time, my science teacher asked me to dissect a frog. That didn't go so well, so we had to do a backup plan. And my father, who was a defense contractor, got special permission to get me access on the weekend to come into the facility and take a look at what he did. I knew he traveled all the time. He loved what he did, and so I got a chance to see drawings that he'd done on paper. They had been unclassified. I saw the markings. They were unclassified, and I got to see designs he did on paper end up landing on missions protecting our men and women in the field. And I knew he would travel and do shock trials and examine that. And so for me to be able to see something that my dad did on paper then protect our national interests is what sparked that fire. So from there, I got a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Duke University. At the time, personal computing was not very reliable. We can argue today we might have some of those challenges. So I did a computer science independent study, and that actually led me to do an alternate path. When I graduated, I took a job like my dad in the defense industry, but on a different journey, and that was looking at network and communication security. And so that then began my journey. I later went to the University of Pennsylvania and got a master's in the management of technology. But the opportunity to take what we do and deliver solutions that protect our nation and our allies is what drives me, right? And so it is looking for your passion. The other lesson my father made sure I understood is that you will work 90,000 hours in your lifetime. So do what you love and love what you do. And I can honestly say in 25 years that there aren't too many days I don't get to do what I love and love what I do.
Good afternoon, everyone. I guess, family and community has always been really important to me and part of my growing up. So my mom was a math teacher, and my father actually worked as a laborer, an hourly worker at Exxon in Baton Rouge at the chemical plant. And I was around him and knew all the things that he had learned and wanted to aspire to, but his education, limited him. So my mom and my dad always, was pushing all of their kids to go to college. I was the only one out of three who actually attended, and I went to the University of Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner, and majored in petroleum engineering. Didn't really know what it was, but I knew I had an affinity to being connected to the oil and gas industry because of my father. As a freshman, have always been competitive, but as a freshman, a lot of times, freshmen don't get the internships and they don't get the opportunities because they don't really have a lot of coursework. But I was challenged to go ahead and go to the career fair and make my pitch as to why it would be a good investment for the future. And it was a gentleman who was totally opposite from anybody that I had ever run into, took a chance on me and gave me an opportunity to be an intern. That turned into 6 internships, and I did that in between my undergraduate degree, and then later on went to Rice University in Houston and got a master's degree in environmental. And if that wasn't enough, I went on and got my PhD in environmental toxicology from Texas Southern University. I was really, really fortunate to have a company that, again, invested in me, and I found out very quickly that I loved what I was doing, and like Tonya mentioned, you get compensated very well. And then, when you can come home and you can share stories with your father, the father who never had the son that he wanted to have. Yeah. So, to share stories about the things that I learned, the places I've gone, spent 5 years overseas in Africa with my family, numerous jobs between manufacturing, upstream reservoir facilities. You give me something, I probably have done it, no matter what. So in terms of the journey, again, it was just a lot of influence. And although my parents were a big part of it, it was an 8th grade science teacher. Her name was Miss Moore. A really beautiful African-American woman who challenged all of her students, but particularly those female students, to do more, be more, and she explained to me what this thing called engineering was, and I knew that was what I needed to be. And I went on to the high school for engineering professions. That solidified everything, started taking higher math, making straight A's, beating all the boys. And so that was a real, there was a real incentive to do very well. And that's kind of how my journey started, just wanting to do well, to do things. Even if I didn't make an A or I struggled through a class, it was really just getting through it and understanding and learning it, and then from there being able to capitalize on it. So that's my journey.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Adrienne Trimble, and my role is to lead the diversity and inclusion efforts for Toyota's North American operations. So for me, I am probably I think I am the lone non-STEM person sitting at the table here, but my passion is really because of the women that are at this table. So when I was coming through my corporate career and how I even ended up in the field of diversity, I started off by working in human resources. And as I was working in human resources, I realized that there was an opportunity and a need to create a culture that would allow women and minorities to go into fields that traditionally they had been locked out of, underrepresented. And my goal and my passion is to work within that corporation or within the company culture to help change it, to help influence it, and to help create it so that not only this generation, but the generations to come can also have access to these types of positions, and that we can move away from the gender biases that we have around these roles to say that yes, women can lead engineering type of fields. They can lead manufacturing facilities around the world. They can lead our IT and service chief information officers. So my role as part of diversity and inclusion is to make sure that I'm working to help create that culture that allows these women to be able to blaze their paths and make sure the journey is open for the next generation coming along.
Good afternoon, I'm your closer, so I'll go ahead and close this out quickly. I'm currently the Executive Director of Intel's Diversity and Technology Fund. You may know that was a $300 million fund that was launched about 18 months ago, where our CEO agreed to work with this commitment to ensure that the representation that's in the workforce is also representative inside of Intel. So we've been on this journey. It's been a wonderful journey. Certainly committed to the work, and we're seeing great results. In terms of my path to engineering, it was simple. My brother told me to do it. It's very simple. I'm 8 of 8 kids from South Carolina. Any South Cadillacs in here? And really, we had a lot of space and farmyard to do some problem solving. And like most mothers and many mothers in the room, I think my mother was the chief engineer, my first engineer that I got exposure to. In fact, when I was home last week, she had a pot lid that she had used a wine cork for the topper because the other lid was burning her hand. So I think that's where my engineering skills came from. My background is electrical engineering, MBA, and I'm currently pursuing a PhD because I love learning. Right now what we're trying to really take care of inside of Intel is really to try and make sure that we retain our diverse talent at higher rates than we're losing majority counterparts. We'll talk more about that later.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for those awesome introductions. And one of the things I just want to point out that you might have noticed was there were a few recurring themes among these amazing women. People talked about the importance of mentoring. Many people mentioned role models that they had both within their families. So there were 2 panelists that talked about their fathers as being these great role models that they had, teachers playing a great role. So again, for the parents in the audience, never underestimate the power you have as being an influencer and an encourager of your children and their career aspirations. And the other thing that I wanted to point out that was also mentioned is the importance of confidence. And this piece alone is so critical in helping our young people go through these difficult subjects and persist in these fields. So just wanted to point out a few of these things that were common among these amazing women. So we're gonna transition a little bit, now that you know who they are, how they got here, we're gonna talk a little bit more about the work that they're currently doing, and time always flies when you're having fun. So we are gonna whip through really quickly, just try to get at least one question for all of our panelists. So with that, I'm gonna encourage everyone to try to be really pithy with your remarks. And so I'm gonna start with Regina next to me. So Regina, can you tell us a little bit more about the manufacturing sector and how we have seen a decline, but how can we ensure that our minority students in particular are going into these fields and in the manufacturing space?
Well, one of the things that I would encourage you all to do some research on is really understand where manufacturing is going in the United States. So it was mentioned before, we are not the manufacturers of 20 years ago or 30 years ago. We are less and less mechanically driven and more electrically driven. And so the biggest thing for me when we think about our minority students, our women students who are really wanting to get a career in manufacturing, one, you've got to love to be on a team, love to work with a diverse organization. You will have people that will be the age of your grandfather. that'll be younger than you, that'll have a high school degree, that'll have a vocational degree or a college degree. And you'll need to know how to bring that diverse understanding, that diverse thought process together to solve a problem. But in particular today, because we are becoming more electrically driven, we need students that are digitally savvy. Not Facebook, not tweeting, but really understanding computers, understanding programming, understanding how we can take the information systems that we have today and bring them back onto the manufacturing floor and back to our suppliers. Currently today, we need to know where our consumers, for Procter & Gamble in particular, we're a fast-moving consumer goods company, we want to know where you're buying, what you're buying, why you're buying it, so that we can make sure that we are serving you completely and fully every single day. And there are information systems that are being developed at an exponential rate. So having students that understand how to bring that data in is critical. In addition, manufacturing is all about problem solving. We have problems every day. And when you're not making something, when your production line is down and you're not making product, you're not making money. So we need people that also can be problem solvers, that have honed that critical thinking skill in school, have gotten opportunities to apply that technical expertise to something practical, and showing that you've had that expertise, you've had those examples, and being able to communicate that. As well as we need folks that can communicate, that can do it verbally and written and face-to-face. Right? So I tell you today that many of my young engineers come to me and they'll send me a text. They have a problem. I can't tell what they want in 120 characters. And when they come and talk to me, then they struggle with getting their ideas out. And so really having the strong communication skills is really what's required today in manufacturing to be successful.
Thank you so much for that. So let's shift a little bit to the energy sector. So this is a question for Alicia and Shawn. So we are definitely experiencing in the United States, due to technological advances, this growth in terms of oil and natural gas supply. So how does that impact your industry in particular? And also, can you talk about skill sets that people need? So young people who are interested in going and working in the energy sector, what sorts of skills will they need as they are looking to get into this field? So Alicia, if you want to start, or Shawn, either or.
Okay, I'll start. So technology and innovation, have always been kind of cornerstones to ExxonMobil. A lot of our patents and things that we do now have led us to be leaders. And we're always trying to make sure the pipeline stays full. We employ over 19,000 engineers and scientists. Well, having said that, when you have new technologies and new ways and new efficient ways of getting energy to market, we need a lot of employees to help us continue that innovation. In terms of what kinds of technologies are we looking for, we're looking for anything that will help us meet those needs, make it more efficient, and get it there faster. I think you also asked about what kind of STEM skills would we need. I think it's been said, the analytical skills, of course, but those interpersonal skills, being able to work with others, being adaptable, being flexible and fungible, and having a global mindset to work with other cultures, people who have different perspectives and different ideas. And if you can do that, you can really be successful in energy and really probably all these industries.
Yeah, and I guess what I would add is we know where lots of oil and gas is. Technology is the key to unlocking that oil and gas in an efficient, both from an environmentally safe as well as economically viable. And so as we drill deeper into thousands of feet of water, it takes technology to be able to do that. Some people are often surprised, as an IT person, that there's IT within the energy industry. Well, there has to be. In order for us to operate the types of things that we operate across our value chain, whether it be in our upstream piece of the business, which is responsible for exploring and finding and producing that oil and gas. Sometimes I think of it as magic when you've got like a subsea equipment down on the sea floor that's 20,000 feet down, and then you got to drill more, drill further down. You've got to have technology that is a piece of that. So there's a term, IIoT, which is the Industrial Internet of Things. And so we're starting to see that even more from an IT perspective, where you're seeing this blurring between physical assets, sensors, and information technology. And so how do we, so we need people that have both of those skills, those analytical skills, to be able to process the data that we have. We have lots of data, very data-rich, information poor. So we've got lots of sensors that are giving us data, but we need people that can actually bring that data in, do analysis. That's where the math, computational science type skills, data science is a role that you will hear a lot of. So folks that can interpret that. And going with that, you can't just be siloed or one-dimensional. You have to be able to apply those skills. So as an IT professional within an industry, within an energy company, you have to be able to know both your academic talent of information technology, as well as understanding the business of the energy industry to really be able to make an impact. And so that willingness to continue learning and to go through. So I've actually done roles outside of information technology within Chevron to deepen my learning, and that's something that I would espouse for everybody. And I think Tonya mentioned it, that learning things like finance, learning things like supply chain, learning things like business planning. Those types of things all help you be a better business person within a global company.
Microphone, musical chairs up here a little bit. Great, so thank you both for those awesome answers. And I heard a cell phone go off, so I hope everyone put your phone on vibrate if you don't already have it. If you haven't already done so, appreciate it. So transitioning a bit from the conversations that we just had about skill sets to now thinking about how does an organization actually proactively work on inclusion and bringing diverse people in. So I want to switch to Tonya, and I want to ask you if you could talk a little bit more specifically about the work that GM is doing around really being proactive in the different activities, specifically, if applicable, bringing African American women into your organization.
Oh, thank you. Would love to share that. So General Motors has a long history, long legacy of partnering with many state universities and organizations, and certainly a great deal of diverse organizations that are rooted in or believe in this mission of STEM, whether it be the Society for Women Engineers, whether it be NSBE, and the organizations like Howard University, North Carolina A&T. So we have a long legacy of doing this. I think that our mission, or our understanding of how important this is, goes back many decades. But we've taken that beyond just how we support these secondary institutions, and we've looked at the problem from a much more holistic perspective. We realize that it's not the 19-year-old or necessarily the 15-year-old that we need to convince that they need to start considering a career in STEM, but it starts with a K through 12 education. And so there's been a lot of investment. And you know what? The thing is those K through 12 folks, they don't buy cars. So that's just where our heart is, because we know what we need for the future. So certainly in our home state of Michigan, we do a lot. And we also encourage in all of the different municipalities and states that we have plants and other operations that they do the same. So we invest in K through 12 curriculum. We make sure that we're present in the school and do our part. We also invest in helping to enrich teachers and give them and help them to think through more creative ways to bring the programming into the classroom. So we do it for the students, we do it for the teachers. So those are some of the things that we do from a more holistic perspective. We look at this as certainly readying our pipeline for when we're ready to recruit. So we have many initiatives I'm sure many of these other organizations have similar initiatives of how they attract and recruit strong talent, strong African American women talent and minority talent. And then once we bring them into the organization, because it's just not about recruiting so we get credit there, it's about retention and how we nurture and grow talent. So within General Motors, we have 12 employee resource groups, but one in particular I'd like to talk about is our General Motors African Ancestry Network, and how that ERG certainly helps employees of African descent align their personal interests and their interest of growing within the company, but also to General Motors' overall business objectives and goals. Another ERG that marries to your question is our GM Woman, and our GM Woman Council is actually led by the highest ranking African American female in all of automotive, our head of global manufacturing, Alicia Bola Davis, and that organization has 22 councils around the world. So again, we look at this much more holistically and what we want to offer women as well as diverse people in our company. And so then beyond retaining them, it's about how we elevate them. So I don't need to mention Alicia again, but you know, it's no secret that automotive is predominantly male or male-dominated industry. But we're proud to say that being the largest automotive, looking down at Toyota there, we have a female CEO. We have a female CEO. And so we feel really strong that we're rooted in the values and trying to promote the culture, and also supporting the communities globally to support African American women, women overall, and minorities and diverse folks around the world.
Great, thank you. And I love that you mentioned that you all start at K-12 in terms of your focus area. So it's like if we wait till students are in college or beyond, it's too late. So thank you for raising that point. So I want to shift to Valicia. So cybersecurity. This is becoming increasingly a hot topic these days for various reasons, which I shall not mention. Can you talk a bit more, particularly in the cybersecurity space, like the things that are happening to really focus on bringing in people in this area?
Absolutely. Statistics showed that in 2019 we'll need 1.9 million cybersecurity professionals. In the U.S. last year there were 200,000 openings that went unfilled. Globally, so a basic certification in cyber is called a CISSP, a Certified Information System Security Professional. There are only about 70,000 holders of that globally, right? So you can already see the gap that exists, and it touches all of us because everything we do is connected to technology, and so being able to assess and deal with vulnerabilities with that and harden existing systems. So every system we have today, it may not have been developed, you know, if you think about some of our energy systems, they may not have been developed when the internet was there, but certainly now they're touching it. So what are those vulnerabilities that are there? So as a company, we're very passionate about addressing that gap. So for the past 4 years, Raytheon with the National Cybersecurity Alliance has sponsored an annual millennial survey where we go and we talk to 18 to 26-year-olds and really assess what is even their knowledge about cyber as a career. And we've done this for 4 years. Actually, we released it in October. October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, if you're not aware. So the results, you'll hear a lot more about it. But for the past couple of years, the study showed that 62% of millennials don't know what a cyber career is. They've never had a teacher speak to them about it. They've never had any hands-on experience with cyber. So if you don't know what it is, you know, they know what a doctor is, they know what a lawyer is, and as I mentioned earlier, their only other image is this, you know, geek that doesn't have any social skills in movies, and it's much more than that. So along with sponsoring that study so that we can all understand the problem, and I should say with that study we also last year emphasized the gender gap as well, and we expanded it globally. We looked at our trends and we looked at Europe, we looked at Southeast Asia, the Middle East, so we didn't just talk to millennials here, we went across the country. And what was sad last year is we saw the gap of awareness between men and women actually widen in that age group, particularly here in the US. And so as a part of that, we then sponsor activities. For cyber, hands-on exposure is key in participating in competitions. And so we annually sponsor the National Cybersecurity Collegiate Defense Competition, where students can come together, about 200 schools compete each year, and they get hands-on exposure with what this job feels like, and they compete against one another. And then the winner, we personally sponsor to bring here to Washington. We took them to the White House this year, took them to the FBI, took them to the CIA to see what other professionals are doing. We then also work with the Boys and Girls Club and do, so you talk about that K through 12, giving them some hands-on experience to technologies and what does computer science feel like. And then earlier this year, we initiated a scholarship dedicated to women, where we will give 2 women a year a full scholarship to major in computer science or cybersecurity. And along with paying for their college education, we will pay for all of their certifications in cyber as well, because those certifications can run $1,000 or more a piece, and then also provide them a co-op and an internship. And so we are, putting money there because the need is great, and it's still a small sample, right? It's partnering with others to make sure that at a minimum we get people exposed to what the career looks like and what it is, because the need is great, the compensation is great, as well as the recognition that it touches all of our lives.
So Natoki, let me just chime in here, because I think it's really important in the K through 12 arena, and something that all of us can influence. The access and the exposure has to start so much earlier. Our students are finding themselves in formal education, and I think as corporations and also as parents, we have to influence that direction as early as K through 12. The students don't know what they don't know. That's why access and hands-on are so important. In our Oakland Unified School District, Intel is basically re-platforming the entire curriculum for Oakland Unified. We've been in that work for about a year. We've seen a 400% increase in student interest in just 1 year. So I believe in our students, but we also have to believe and influence the K through 12 system to get this curriculum in that system. It doesn't have to be outside of school, it belongs inside of school, because our children today, their competition is global, and they're getting this much earlier. So I think that it's good to get it for careers, but we need it much earlier.
Yeah, and actually, Barbara, if you could just, one thing to add on to that, I wanted to ask you about particularly targeting low-income communities, and can you talk a bit more about how do we, because I would imagine there's definitely a big awareness problem among the low-income
Yeah,
spaces.
so a couple things that come to mind for me. So how many saw some recent research that says it's going to take African Americans 228 years to catch up with wealth of our peers? Yeah. I firmly believe that if we want to accelerate that, STEM is the channel to do it.
Absolutely.
And so as such, what Intel is doing, based on our workforce gaps, which is African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we've launched initiatives in high school to really start that curriculum process very early, low-income schools, 3 Native American reservations, and we're basically working with the teachers, bringing the teachers to Intel, taking Intel employees to the schools, and we're literally seeing results that are super impressive. In fact, in Oakland, I'd share with you the 400% increase, but what's equally important is we surveyed the teachers day one. Only 14% of the teachers saw that their kids could have a place at Intel. We worked with them for 6 months, and 100% after 6 months saw their kids could have a place at Intel. So we aren't shifting capacity issues, we're shifting mindset issues. And I think the people in this room can help us do that. It's not going to be one company that can solve these issues. It's going to take every single one of us in this room. But this is our way out of poverty. I know it because it worked for me.
Yes, great, thank you so much. And now I want to shift gears just a little bit, going back. So this last question before we might have time for one question or two from the audience, maybe. I want to ask Adrienne, so when we get our women of color, African American women, into companies, there's this issue around retention. And can you talk a bit about what Toyota is doing to provide structured opportunities that are not only focusing on retention, but actually advancement as well for people within companies?
Absolutely, and I think that actually Tonya mentioned it earlier. What we found is that it's really important that we have an infrastructure in place that allows our employees to understand what their career path is and that they can see growth. And what's really important is that they can see people at the top of the organization that look like them. So we have to find opportunities to get them exposure to our senior leaders, and so that they can be able to show what their capabilities are, because that's a big part of retention. If you can't see yourself in the organization, why would you stay? And if we want to be able to recruit the best and brightest minds, we have to also be able to show them what opportunities exist for them. So we definitely use our employee resource groups, what we call our business partnering groups, to help with that effort. They actually help sponsor activities for them to be able to do professional development. They help put in place policies and things that will help them get exposure to our senior leaders. And they actually help us with our recruitment efforts so that they are partnering with our outside organizations to bring more talent into the organization and helping to accelerate that talent through the organization. One thing that Barbara mentioned is about the piece that most of the folks who come in, it's not just about the career that they have with Toyota, but it's about the impact that they want to make within the company. So many of them like to mentor and get involved in the communities where we're located. So we encourage them, we support them to be able to go out and partner and mentor some of the students in our communities where we're located, to be able to begin building that next generation of talent for the organization. And as you mentioned, if they can't see themselves in our company or see themselves doing the type of work or see people that look like them, that are not necessarily nerds or geeks, but actually cool people that are doing engineering things or science-related things, then they see that as a place of opportunity for them. So we really work with those business partnering groups to do things to connect them to our marketplace, which are the communities where we do business, our workplace, which is how do we increase our representation so that they can see themselves in the company, and then as well as our engagement of them and how we utilize them to make the environment conducive for all of those who are looking to advance their careers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I think we might have time for one question. Yes, we do have like 5 minutes, literally. I think I saw this gentleman was the first to get his hand up all the way in the back there. If you want to stand, tell us your name and your question.
San Francisco, and we can talk a whole other conversation about the high-tech space and the challenges that we're working with there. But I think we have this, what I'm starting to see is, because I've done work with K-Port Center even in the East Bay and speaking with a lot of students, and I feel like our vision of what success is for young people, I think is a bit abstract. I think it's a little bit all over the place. And I think that when I go and speak to students and they see me, I start to see a spark. I start to see people be more engaging. And I think with like where we are socially, in the media
I
and
would
the news.
encourage you to get to your question quickly, because we are like,
I'm sorry. Okay.
ask the question.
Yeah. Basically, it's just, what are your thoughts on how do we kind of fight back against kind of social pressures and the things that are going on in society, and how do we scale basically this entire panel to be in front of students all the time?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I wanted to mention. I mean, is you heard each of us say how pleased we were to be on this panel, and I'm sure that most of us, in our day-to-day jobs every day, we are one of the only ones. And so role modeling is very important, and I do think it's really at an early age. And another statistic that we see is if we do not have kids that have math proficiency in 4th grade, it is very difficult for them to become engineers, because if they don't have the math proficiency in 4th grade, they can't do algebra in 8th grade, they can't do calculus in 12th grade, which means they're not going to get into an engineering program. The issue is overcoming stereotypes. You heard Valicia talk about the fact that what happens when you ask about when you say, hey, a cybersecurity person, it's a white male who has no social skills. We've got to get role models in front of our children as early as possible to fight these deep seeded stereotypes that they cannot do it. That is really the way to get there, because math is hard. The issue, but it's solvable. The issue is because those stereotypes say that if you are a girl or you are of color, that you can't do math, the first blip that you have with math then reinforces that stereotype. So we have to fight against that.
And we were talking about that on a little bit before. It also comes down to your teachers too. If you have really good teachers, you know, they will inspire you. That even if you make a mistake or you don't quite get it the first time, that dedicated teacher, the one who really understands and is really invested in educating you, will help you through it. Whereas you might come across a teacher, that one teacher that's, you know, gives up on you or won't invest in that remediation to be able to come back from that. And a lot of times our kids give up.
Yeah, the only quick add I would say is we have to also involve the students in the problem solving of this. So many times and think of this as all of us own companies, we would never design a product without having the customer input in that product. Yet we're designing these systems for the young people on top of the young people without their voice. So in the case of Oakland, we had focus groups with the young students. The girls told us, I don't know engineering, I don't know what it means, and I don't want to do it if I don't know that I'm making a difference. Therefore, our curriculum should be redesigned to ensure that that relevant content socially is embedded in the curriculum. So I think it's also important to give the students a voice because we need their voice in this design.
Great. Thank you so much. So we are just about out of time. Now I want to give each of our panelists a chance for a super tweet length. Emphasis, 140 characters, closing thoughts. It could be anything you want the audience to know, what they can do as an individual to take this great information you shared to empower their communities, et cetera, or in their organizations, or even if it's just something that you know now that you wish you had known when you were a younger person or starting out in your career. So take like 20 seconds, or not 20 seconds, 5 seconds to think about it. And Tonya, I'm going to let you start because you were itching to respond to that last question. So tweet
All right,
link,
thank you. Really fast.
Okay.
I love that you use the word abstract. What I would encourage all of you to do is to not let us take arts out of STEM. I think that by doing that, we need to make sure that it's integrated, because if you're thinking about innovation and what we need from a creativity perspective, we need arts in it. We need to make sure that if they like basketball, show them that that's physics. If someone likes to do hair, show them that's chemistry and that's biology. So let's not devalue their natural talents and not let them see the science and the technology and the innovation that's in that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So I'll start off real quick, even though I said tweeting was not a great skill for manufacturing. I've had great leaders that told me this: the universe cooperates with a made-up mind. And so if we leave today understanding what our influence can be, we will then see the results we want. P&G does that every single day. We know that diversity is essential to us, and inclusion is our game changer. So we are doing that work. We expect our plants and our leaders within the communities we work in to be in those K through 12 curriculum and be the role models, be the mentors. So if you want to make a change in your community, find out what those organizations are that are in your community that are doing that work today, and find out what their barriers are to delivering what they want, whether it's funding, resources, time, and help give that to them so they can make that impact.
Emphasis again. Tweets link. Y'all are amazing. You have all this wealth, but we're over time, so I just want to give everybody a chance to say something really quickly.
I'll go quick. Tweet. Educator girl, she'll change the world. Educator in STEM, she'll make you a new world.
Okay, I can't top that, but what I will say to all of you in the room, very quickly, is be the change that we want to see.
Yeah.
Help lead it and help change it from whatever your vantage point is that you can actually influence the next generation.
Exposure is the key. I mean, the kids don't know what they don't know. They see doctors and lawyers and all those things and athletes and entertainers. I don't know if any of them really know what an engineer does. So to the extent you can, be that exposure, be that example for them.
And I'll just close with encouraging them to follow their passion and be who they are. And when we teach our kids to embrace who they are individually, everyone has their own gifts. And so if we can teach them to embrace their gifts and hold to their values regardless of those pressures that they may see, as we heard the young man mention, then that's where they can then start to build their strength. And finally, I'll just say, math is a great equalizer. You know, so we talked about the influence of teachers. Even if you get that bad teacher, math's a great equalizer. It's either right or wrong, right? And we like to be right. So, so thank you for hearing us today.
So I will say hands-on is the key. The kids have to see what this is about. It has to be done in a collective impact. We all have great programs. We have to bring them all together. So hashtag 50K Coalition. We want to graduate 50,000 diverse engineers by 2025. Get on that mission.
I want to thank this amazing panel again. I'm going to let you give them an applause, but once you clap, don't go anywhere. So we're going to let our panelists, our first panel, go, but we do have a second panel that's going to be immediately afterwards. So I'm going to invite you all to thank our panelists again and then stay put in your chairs as well.
And while the second panel is on their way up, I want to be a little shameless here and do a plug for one of the things that I have the privilege of doing as a U.S. Congressman, and that is nominating young people to our academies. There's a lot of STEM that takes place, a lot of majors that the kids, if they decide to go to the Air Force Academy, if they decide to go to the Naval Academy or to West Point, where they can get the education that they need for these STEM fields.
So I think we're going to keep moving forward. If we can have everybody, I know you guys want to network. We want to keep the conversations to a minimum, or not even to a minimum, to non-existent, actually.
Oh, really?
Wait. How you doing? Good to see you. Yeah. Pleasure. How you doing?
I'm Charlie.
Hey, Charlie.
How are you? I'm just going to switch this screen out.
Okay, go right ahead. Yeah, go right ahead.
I'm going to be down there next month. So I'll have to make it. Okay. I'm there for a couple of days. So I'll give you a way to contact me.
Okay. I'm just going to... I think we want to wait until people... Okay.
Right.
Let me just check with you.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Delochter.
Delochter. I got it.
Just G. I go by G.
All right. I got you.
And I'm Allison.
Allison and Charlie Bolden. Good to meet you both. No, that's old. That's way old.
We're going to start a new clip of Hidden Figures that has never been seen before. So if we can have people sit down as soon as possible, so and we're going to dim the lights. So thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Janelle Monahan with a very special look at our new movie, Hidden Figures. It's a true story.
The audio is.
Thank you very much. I'm already excited to see that. That's going to be really good, and we'll make sure that I take my 10-year-old son to go and see it with me. And thank you very much. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the second part of the program today. Dr. Bolden, good to see you.
Always good.
The second panel is entitled Hidden Figures in STEM. and our esteemed panelists will discuss the role of that black scientists played during the nation's first, during the race to put the man on the moon. In addition, you are all in as for a treat. As you saw, they're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I just really want to thank 21st Century Fox for letting us see a clip of the movie. And again, just want to thank the panel for, thank you. And again, thank the panelists for the second part of this program. Very excited to learn more about what you're doing and about STEM and how we're going to continue to grow in this area. Thank you. Dr. Ford.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So yeah, it's super awesome and excited about this panel. And it's also great because we talked so much in the first panel about image and representation, so it's a great segue for this next discussion. So I want to actually start by asking, how many of you know who Katherine Johnson is? See, all of our panelists know, of course. But I love beginning. How many of you had seen the trailer for Hidden Figures already? So this is amazing, right? So what's amazing right now, people, we haven't seen the film yet. You ask a room, who knows who Katherine Johnson is? Most people don't know the name still, but they have at least seen the trailer. My hope is, beyond, once this film is out, we can ask a room like this who she is, and everyone will raise their hand. So I'm going to tell you who she is really quickly. So Katherine Johnson is still alive. She's 98 years old. NASA mathematician, black woman, okay, calculated the trajectories that got us to space and to the moon. She was a critical part of this story, but most people didn't know about her until very recently. Actually, she was awarded the Medal of Freedom by the president last year. At the ripe age of 97, she was able to get this award from the president. And so it's an exciting time, but it's also very apparent that there are women, especially women of color, who have been innovators and who have been a part of these fields, but their stories are just not known. And so that's what this panel is ultimately about, is about how do we elevate the image when it doesn't even just have to be fictional. This is based on a woman, a real life woman who's still with us today. And also, and this is actually what the work that I'm currently doing at the White House, what's the role of media in that? What's the role that entertainment media, and what can it play in helping us change the view that the public broadly has about who is a STEM professional and who works in these areas? And so with that, I'm going to introduce our amazing panel that we have with us today. So joining us, and actually my piece of paper is a little bit out of order. So right next to me, Elizabeth Gabler from Box 2000. We also have Mimi Valdez, who was an executive producer for the Hidden Figures film. We also have, I'm looking at the order. Lisa Galopter. Yeah, I was like, Lisa, how do you pronounce her last name? I've been knowing her for I don't know how long, and I never can pronounce her last name. So she's at the U.S. Department of Education. We also have Dr. Rudy Horn, who is a professor at Morehouse College. Joining us as well is Dr. Allison Scott from the Level the Playing Field Institute. And last, but certainly not least, is Major General Charles Bowden, who is the administrator of NASA and an astronaut. So similar to what we did for the previous panel, I'm just going to go through and ask each of our panelists a few questions. And then hopefully, if time permits, we'll have a chance to take a question or two from the audience. So as you're listening, keep in mind that you might have a chance to ask a question of our esteemed panel. So Elizabeth, I want to start with you actually. So you have played such an amazing role in a few other awesome and very impactful films, Life of Pi, The Fault in Our Stars. Can you tell us what caught your attention when you heard about this Hidden Figures project, and what ultimately made the decision? What was your decision making that ultimately led you to just take this on, and now we have this amazing thing we're all highly anticipating?
Thank you. One of the most powerful things that we can do in the entertainment industry is provide our audiences around the world with material that inspires them and that creates an intense emotion in them, whether that be humor or romanticism or adventure or just the compassion for other human beings. And when I read the script of Hidden Figures, it did all those things for me. And I was so moved, I cried at the end of it, and I said, I have to be part of making this movie. I felt that it was a story of three women, particularly three women, but also others, who refused to let the forces that were saying no to them stop them from following their dreams. And as the mother of a 14-year-old girl, I always want my child and all the children that I know to know that they can achieve their dream if they just keep fighting. And I felt this was one way for us in the entertainment industry to put a positive message of hope into the world that needs it so badly.
Yes, fantastic. And actually, I want to do a quick follow-up, similarly since we're talking about Hidden Figures. And I want to also ask Mimi a question as well. So you are an executive producer for this project, but you've had an amazing career as well in terms of being in music, philanthropy, journalism, etc. So can you talk about your inspiration? What inspired you to get involved with this project?
Well, as soon as I heard it, I had a meeting with Donna Gelati, who found this book and got this script made and brought it to Elizabeth. And I had a meeting with her about another project. And as soon as she started describing it to me, you know, as Pharrell's producing partner, I was like, wait a minute, this story is amazing and we will do anything to be a part of the project. And I think, you know, Pharrell and I just started getting into movies. This is actually our second movie. Our first movie was Dope. But what we want to do, and Pharrell's always been really good about his own celebrity and how he uses it, is to bring attention to projects like this. Our goal with our content is always to, you know, obviously to entertain, but we want to inspire and educate. And throughout his whole music career, he's always tried to put focus on trying to make education cool. His first band, NERD, he purposely chose that name because he wanted to make being a nerd cool. This was just an extension of that. I mean, Katherine Johnson, her story is so amazing, and if we could do anything to bring this amazing woman's story to life, we just wanted to be a part of it.
Awesome, wonderful. And so still, since we're going to keep this Hidden Figures theme, I want to keep in this spirit. So Administrator Bolden, can you talk a bit about, so NASA was obviously very deeply engaged in the production of this film. We also know of another film like The Martian. That NASA's been involved in. Can you talk about that process and just the role that NASA has played in working with Hollywood to tell these stories?
Yeah, we feel that Hollywood, social media are critical partners for us. We would not be where we are today were it not for those two. I've got Bert sitting down here who's my specialist. He is actually the guy that, we have one person who interfaces with entities in Hollywood that want to get something from NASA. We communicate with millions more people today than we did 5 years ago because we have entered the world of social media. When we have an event, we have a NASA social. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a launch or something else where we invite people from around the world. They apply and we bring them in and let them get briefed on what the mission is going to be. And it is, when I talk to them, I tell them I don't want them to try to tell a technical story. I want them to tell people how they feel, because we're in a people business. People think about machines all the time, but we're really people. And if I can get them to communicate how they felt when they had a NASA experience, then I think we're going to win people.
Great. So NASA feels that this is a benefit for you all as well.
It is a necessity. Let me put it that way. It's like math and science.
Yes.
It is an app. I'm a big arts person. In fact, my deputy is David Newman, and when we talk about STEM, the two of us talk about STEAMed, because we say, you know, science, technology, engineering, arts, math, science, and design. You know, you don't want a funky looking spacesuit when we go to Mars. So, you know.
Thank you so much. So, Dr. Horn, Rudy, so you, if I understand, you were a consultant for, this is amazing. We have all these people who are connected to this project in different capacities. So can you talk about your experience doing that, but also you are a mathematician, a professor, and talk about you as an African-American man, mathematician, like what led you to want to become a professor and a mathematician?
Okay, everybody can hear me. I'm originally from Chicago, and I was, until my junior year of high school, honestly, I wanted to be a lawyer. But then my junior year, I took a physics class, and I really loved physics. And then the next year, I took calculus, and I loved that even more. So I decided to major in engineering physics. So I went to the University of Oklahoma, one of our other panelists was boomer sooner. So I went there for engineering physics, but I realized I didn't like engineering so much, but I ended up double majoring in physics and math. And after that, then I went to graduate school at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and I got my PhD in applied math. My role in the movie Hidden Figures was I was the math consultant. So the math that Taraji's writing on the board, the little girl's writing on the board, that's me. So you can blame me. Right or wrong, I'll be the person who gets the heat for that, and that's okay. If the movie inspires young women, young men for that matter, or anyone to just pursue math, pursue the story of Katherine Johnson, because I had never heard of it, and when I was approached to do this, thanks to a guy named Wynn Thomas, who was the production designer for this movie, I told him with a straight face, like many other people, I was like, I've never heard of Katherine Johnson. And I have a PhD in applied math. And so, but as I learned about her story, and I at first was hesitant about doing this because I actually said, well, maybe you really want an engineer to work with you, but the director and the production people made it clear they wanted a mathematician to work with them, and so I ended up taking the job, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot about her. I was able to work with the actors and actresses. I had never done anything like this before. I am very much an academic. so yeah, but it was a great experience.
Great, thank you so much for that. So this project, we hope, will help inspire countless young women, especially women of color, to see themselves as being capable and more than competent in math or other STEM fields. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about research and evidence-based and like what we know works in terms of helping to promote or foster inclusion. So Dr. Scott Allison, I want to ask you, can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing and particularly what the research tells us that we need to do to help address this persistent issue of getting young girls and children of color into the STEM fields?
Absolutely. So my background is in research, so I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle. So I want to talk a little bit about what happens if we don't tell this story, what happens if we don't have this movie. So a couple statistics, we heard some from the earlier panel. 450 black women nationwide took the AP CS exam in 2015. 450 nationwide. So why is that? Let's start to deconstruct the reason behind those numbers. One is access. So we know that underrepresented students of color and low-income students just don't have access to computer science courses. Based on the panel that was just up here, we know that computing and computational thinking crosses every field. So that's a critical element. The second element that I want to touch on and that research really speaks to is the psychological barriers. So what happens when you are a member of a group underrepresented in any domain, in any field? What are the messages that you're constantly receiving, and how does that affect your decision making? So without seeing individuals like Katherine Johnson, without having those role models, how do black women perceive of the opportunities that they have in specific fields? And that's a really important feature. One more point that I'll make is that it's not just black women. There's also the impact that it has on society at large. To not hear those stories, again, it perpetrates the stereotypes that we're trying to deconstruct about who can be successful in STEM fields, who can be successful mathematicians, computer scientists, et cetera. So that's a little bit about the research background, and I can say a little bit more.
Well, also, what's a gap? So in terms of like, this is what we know, and what don't we know, or what should we invest more resources in understanding from a research perspective?
So I think we actually know a lot. I want to call out Barbara from the last panel who talked about literally just for making an investment on behalf of Intel in Oakland Unified, was able to see a 400% increase in the number of students taking courses. So we know that providing access will increase the number of students that end up entering into those fields. I think what we need to do a little bit more research on and understand, something that I'd be really interested in, is understanding what the impact is of either social media campaigns. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the I am an engineer hashtag that happened about a year ago. The same thing with Hidden Figures. When Hidden Figures comes out, like, what is the impact that has, just kind of in popular culture, society, for Black women, but also more broadly?
Great, thank you. So Lisa, I want to shift to you. So you are at the Department of Education, and also I know you're with USDS, United States Digital Service. Can you talk about what's the role of the federal government in this space, and what's the balance between working with the private sector and this sort of public-private interface? And can you just speak to what's currently happening? What are the focus areas that are really helping to emphasize this importance of diversity in the STEM fields?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's, I want to echo a little bit of what Allison talked about, which is you talked about Black folks taking the AP Computer Science class. I will say this, so I was actually one of them, not last year, a little bit earlier than that. But as a Black woman with a degree in computer science, I know it is hard, few and far between. Talk about role models, none have existed. When I graduated from college, I would have been the 9th Black woman in 25 years to actually graduate with a degree in computer science, and the numbers have in fact gone down since then. So it is really, really sad. And she talked about AP computer science being offered, but I actually want to give you a couple other statistics. So I work both at the U.S. Department of Education as well as technologist with the U.S. Digital Service in the White House. But there's things like, so there's APCS, but only 1/3 of public high schools serving predominantly African Americans offer calculus, and only about 40% offer physics. So it's not just computer science, it's not just like, oh, this crazy newfangled sciencey thing. It is things that are basic core things. And just, in fact, in 9 states, no African Americans took the AP Computer Science class. That includes Mississippi, which has the most African Americans in this country. So those are the kinds of things that the government is actually trying to address, whether it is through encouraging and developing STEM programs, either at HBCUs, who are doing a tremendous job graduating the most folks of color in computer science programs.
And just a chime, a little bit about Morehouse. They just recently were awarded from the Mathematical Association for producing the most African American math students as well, who go on to graduate school.
Yeah. So there are a number of programs that the Department of Education is putting into place in terms of trying to support schools, communities, and organizations that are trying to make change. That includes both in-school programs, we've heard some things about, and then also out-of-school programs, informal learning, because as everybody has talked about, this is the opportunity that will exist for us in terms of growing our economy, growing our African American community's opportunity to have economic growth, and affect, in fact, what the future of the country looks like.
Great. So I want to shift gears a little bit and give a few of our panelists a chance to tell you a little bit more about their pathways, because I think they have some really cool things that they've done that we would be remiss if we didn't give them a chance to share. So Lisa, since you were just speaking, I'll put you back on the spot again. So you have had an interesting career as a Black woman with a degree in computer science, and you were critical to the launch of Hulu. I know you also worked for BET. So can you talk a little bit about that, your experience with working with these platforms as a technologist and as an African American woman, or just your journey to do that?
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. So this is one of the things that I talk about quite frequently, which is people talk about computer science. It's like it's this thing you have to go to a dark corner and write programs in. And I will say, and I'm kind of here to try to shatter that myth as best that I can. I'm going to go back a little bit further, which is I was a software engineer on a project called Shockwave, which, depending on your age, you may have heard of. There's not a lot of nodding. I don't appreciate any of you. So Shockwave brought animation to the web. Before Shockwave, the web did not move. It was static text. Oh, it was ubiquitous. You didn't know what it was called. All of you have it on your computers today. Not on your phones, though. we'll leave that aside. So as an engineer, I worked on that, and I've worked at the intersection of media and technology for almost 30 years now. And it's been a really, really interesting journey. So I started as a software engineer at a software company, writing code in a darkened, they unscrew the light bulbs. That's true, but actually as kind of my career progressed, and as the technology progressed, and as the media changed, it actually comes full circle, so that I can do things like help launch Hulu, run BET Digital, and try to make influence about how people consume media. And so as we start to think about, the hidden figures in media, it is the other people on the previous panel talked about, like, it's about following your passion. And today I would say that computer science is not something that sits off in a corner. It's like water. It's like learning to read. Like, people don't say, well, I don't need to learn to read because I'm not going to be a novelist. That is where we are today. Computer science is in every single thing we do, whether it's sports, fashion, finance, it's media especially. And so I just think that that's a really critical thing to drive home.
Great, thank you. So I want to also shift and ask Administrator Bolden if he would talk. So how many of you know an astronaut, like personally, you've ever met one or been in the room with one? Really? Okay. No. Get some people hanging. There are a lot of astronauts that have a lot of friends here. So, Administrator, can you tell us about, first of all, you were, if I'm reading correctly, 4 missions over 14 years. So I want to know, what was it like in space, just from your perspective, but also can you tell us about your journey to becoming an astronaut and then administrator of NASA?
My journey was very unlikely. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, in the segregated South. My mom and dad were teachers, and they always told me and my brother we could do anything we wanted to do. They just beat that into us. However, I learned that it is critically important for someone to reinforce that, because as I grew up, the only thing I wanted to do was go to the Naval Academy. I applied. I had to go to the President of the United States to get there. I got to the Naval Academy, hated it, but I stayed because my dad said hang in there one more week for 52 weeks. 2 things I knew when I left C.A. Johnson High School in Columbia: I was not going to become a Marine, and I was not going to fly airplanes because that was inherently dangerous. I graduated because a Marine had really impressed me. My first year I became a Marine, and because I just, I couldn't think of anything better to do, and my wife said, let's go to Pensacola. We went to Pensacola, and I took flight training and fell in love with it immediately. Subsequently decided I wanted to be a test pilot, and so I applied over and over and over again, and I became a test pilot. And then I forgot about what my mom and dad taught me, because in 1977, NASA advertised for people to become a space shuttle astronaut. And I didn't even think about it. And the reason I didn't was because I didn't think I'd be selected. I didn't know, there were no astronauts who looked like me. It escaped the fact that I was a test pilot, so I already had everything you needed. And I met Ron McNair, the late, great Dr. Ron McNair. He came up for a reunion. I met Ron, we talked for a weekend, and he asked me if I was gonna apply for the space program before he left. I said, not on your life. And he looked at me, he said, why not? I said, they never picked me. And he said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. He said, going back to what the previous panel said, how do you know if you don't ask? Yeah. Right. And so going back to what several of the panelists said, we've got to teach young kids they have to ask. They have to follow their passion. And so it took me in my adult life to decide that my mom and dad were right the very first time. And so I interviewed and got into the space program and stayed there for 14 years and flew 4 times on the shuttle. And
so what was it like in
awesome.
space?
It's just very quickly, the two most dramatic things are, and again, they're senses. The sense of vision, seeing this planet from that vantage point, it is the most breathtaking thing that anybody can imagine, and that's why we seek to get as many people in space as we can. Yeah. You cannot see this planet from that vantage point and not understand that we got to fix things. Wow. That's one thing. The second thing is the sensation of floating. Abiding by Newton's law, the fact that with gravity just unleashed, you float, and you're constantly falling, to be factual, but centrifugal force won't let you, and you move your head, your body follows, you stabilize yourself, and you stay there. Your food, you put it out, you go get water, and you come back, and your food is still sitting there. So it's awesome. Yeah.
What's the cutoff age to apply?
The good thing is there is no cutoff age, and there is no minimum age as long as you're a college graduate with a technical undergraduate degree. John Glenn flew at the age of 77, and of course he had flown before. But you know, we're not very restrictive at all, except for meeting basic qualifications of physical fitness and academic background.
So it's not too late for any of us.
It is not too late. I don't see
space.
anybody out there in the audience that is not eligible to apply as long as they have a technical undergraduate background. We had 18,300 applicants this year for the astronaut class of 2017. 18,300. We're probably going to pick 10.
Wow. How many women in the
in the class of 2013 is, hey, my class, my favorite class, because for the first time ever in the history of anything I've ever been involved with, we picked 8, 4 women, 4 men.
Wow.
That has never happened.
Wow, we could sit here and talk all day about NASA and wanting to go to space. I want to shift a little bit, and still in the spirit of STEM careers, I want to talk about STEM careers in the entertainment industry. When we think about it, it's in the context of Silicon Valley, et cetera. So Elizabeth, I want to ask you your perspective on STEM jobs within the entertainment industry, and how do we recruit, or how does the entertainment world recruit top STEM talent to the entertainment industry?
Well, the entertainment industry is the one thing that is just changing every second. With the advances in technology, we've been able to make different kinds of movies that were impossible to make before. Life of Pi was specifically one of them. That project took me 10 years. We optioned the rights to the book in 2002, and during the development of the script, we realized that it was impossible to actually make the movie, because we couldn't put a boy and a live tiger anywhere near each other. We couldn't put a real hyena or a zebra and a tiger anywhere near each other, and it was just, it had no schedule and it had no budget because it was impossible. Then, fortunately, luckily for all of us, we had one of the most brilliant minds in filmmaking, Ang Lee, who is himself a scientist in so many ways. I mean, he's an artist. He's extremely ambitious to create new language in film, and because of his quest for new knowledge, and because of the advances in technology that the animation and visual effects fields had made, we were actually able to make the movie for a reasonable cost and create those creatures that look so real and were so emotive, and blend them with skillful editors and technicians so that you couldn't tell when you were actually looking at the real tiger or the animated tiger. And it was a miracle. And I think that getting that knowledge out there in the universities and high schools and even in the primary schools, that there can be these kinds of careers for you. You have to learn the fundamentals. You've got to study math. You've got to study science. You've got to study visual arts. But there is now such a great opportunity for creative minds to blend their scientific talents and their mathematical talents to enter these fields of visual effects, because it's only going to get more intense, and virtual reality. And there's just so many exciting things happening within the entertainment industry right now, and we need these young minds, men and women, and we need them badly to help us so that we can always move on to the next level and keep our audiences inspired and keep our business alive.
That was perfect, thank you. Yeah. So we're going to pause in our regularly scheduled program for a moment. So we have a special guest with us. So I'm going to invite up to the stage now Representative Cindy Lawyer to come to the stage, who's going to make a few brief remarks, and then we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled program.
Thank you for letting us briefly interrupt the program. I wanted to bring up someone that really is passionate about this issue, and he's very passionate about helping young people, helping women of color, helping all people of color to be able to get the education that they need to be able to achieve these jobs that we're talking about, these STEM jobs that are so critical. And the person that I'm going to call up now, Steny Hoyer, Congressman from Maryland, and also the Democratic Minority Whip.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am so pleased to be here. I am the father of 3 women, the grandfather of 2 women. Now, they're not women right this minute, but they're going to be women, and the great-grandfather of 2 women. I got a couple of boys that are in there as well. They're all women of color. They're white. And that color should be irrelevant if they are really good at science, technology, engineering, skills. I have an agenda I call Make It in America. And in that agenda, I travel all over the country politically for candidates that I'm supportive of, and I tell my staff, panel, I want to visit a manufacturing facility in every trip I take, every place I go in the country. And I was in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm not running for president, believe me. I was in Manchester, New Hampshire 3 weeks ago. And I went to Deka Industries. Deka is run by Dean Kamen. Dean Kamen holds 400 patents. You've seen the Segways? You know, you ride on them, they keep balance on the 2 wheels. He invented that. He invented the wheelchair that Jim Langevin from Rhode Island, who is wheelchair bound, but that wheelchair comes up so he can talk to you eye to eye. Got a lot of inventions. And he's got a program called FIRST. That program deals, and he's got thousands of chapters all over the world. And it deals with young people in high school or maybe in college creating robotics to do things. And they need science, technology, engineering, and math skills to do that. And Dean Kamen said to me, he said, you know, I'm a lawyer. It was obvious that he didn't think we needed more lawyers in America. He didn't think we needed more doctors in America. He didn't think we needed more baseball players or football players in America, but he thought we needed more engineers in America. Because he thought in China and other parts of the world, they are producing more and more and more engineers. When I went to law school, there were 136 people in my law school class. 3 women. Today, if you go to Georgetown Law School and see the entering class, 54% of them will be women. What's the point I want to make? We need more women in our engineering schools. We need more expectation of young women who are really much better students at a young age than us poor males. That's fact. And I've observed that in terms of how well they did in school and how I was not doing nearly as well as they were in school. And we need to make sure that there is no discrimination at the earliest possible age of not having young women, whether they be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, not think that we expected them to do anything for which they have the talent to do. Because if we're going to get more engineers in America, it'll be because we get more women engineers. We're getting men engineers now. But we need more and more women in the technical fields. And if you go out to Silicon Valley and you go through the campuses of Google or Facebook or some of the other networking companies and high-tech communications companies, they will tell you, and my friend Sheryl Steinberg, you know her, Lean In. Sheryl will tell you, you know, people didn't expect me to be into this, but I was into it. I'm good at it. And she will tell you more and more and more the highest performers are women. And that means, fellas, that we got to compete a little tougher, you understand. But in so doing, we will make America better. So I want to thank you for this forum because, you know, in the Congress, we take real focus on STEM education. And by the way, so that we don't lose sight of all of the things that make our society great, making it STEAM is not a bad thing to do. The arts and culture and music are great ways to communicate and to enrich us and lift us up. But the technical skills that we are now competing with the rest of the world on are critical. If this country, which as I've said in every forum, is a great country right now, America is a great country. But it will be a greater country if we make sure that all of our people are involved in the technical skills that will be necessary to make it in America, which means manufacturing in America, but also make it meaning succeeding in America. So panelists, thank you very much for being with us. For those of you who may not have been at this conference before, I go to a lot of these conferences. This is my 36th year in the Congress of the United States. This is the best conference that occurs every year in Washington, D.C. The best conference with the best talent for panelists, the most substantive issues that they deal with, and the broadest attendance of extraordinarily able, skilled people who will take the information they get and bring it home to their communities and make their communities better, and in that process make America greater. Thank you all.
Wonderful.
Good to see you. Oh, well, you know, I look down here. I represent Goddard Space Flight Center. Of course. And so I pander to the director of NASA on a regular basis so he will treat Goddard Space Flight. Charlie Bolden is one of the great leaders in our country. You know, an astronaut, a Marine, got all those things, and he trained at Pax River, which I represent, at the test pilot school there. So we're very proud of our Charlie Bolden.
So we will now return to our regularly scheduled program. So I'm just going to ask one more question, and then I want to open it up because I'm sure you all have questions for these amazing people up here. So in the spirit of STEAM, which we just heard, I want to ask Mimi. So you've had some experience, and you have an organization that you've done work with, or that you have established from one hand to another, which focuses on this issue specifically in bringing the arts and STEM together. Can you talk about your work
it's
there?
it's Pharrell's organization that he started along with his mom, Dr. Carolyn Williams, in 2011, and basically they do summer programs that focus on STEAM, because they also include arts and motivation as well.
Two M's in that STEAM.
Exactly, 2 M's. But last summer, they served over 1,000 students in the Virginia Beach area, which is where Pharrell is from. And a lot of the work that they do is very sort of fun, project-based, whether it's sort of taking the students on trips to NASA or the museums. But there is a real focus on motivation, because I think what Dr. Williams feels like, you know, they do a lot of dream mapping and really try to expose these students to the careers that are available, because I think that's always the biggest problem, is that a lot of the kids don't realize all the opportunities that are available to them. So in this program, and the hope is to expand and to do it in other cities, but just to try to expose beyond, because entertainment and all that stuff is fun and cool, but we know how important these careers are in in science, engineering, math are to the world and to the advancement of what we can do as a culture. And I think Pharrell and his mom have done a great job in the limited resources that we've had to do that.
Wonderful, thank you. So I think with that, I would love to open it up to the audience, because I'm sure there are lots of questions for this great panel. So I saw this young lady's hand here first. So if you could stand, tell us your name and your question.
Scream it out.
We'll project while we're waiting for the microphone.
Okay.
Is there any
You're doing okay.
I do need it. Okay, all right. I'm Alexis Corbett. My question is focusing on the movies, theater, and I was wondering, have you seen a push trying to get more movies with African Americans or minorities that are successful? Because, I mean, looking through movie history, I feel like with the movie Queen of Katwe, we have a successful chess player and Black young lady, and so I'm wondering, is there kind of a trend that you're noticing having been in the field?
I'll take that. Well, what I can say is that just in my limited experience just working with Pharrell on these 2 movies that we've done, I think a lot of times what happens is that people greenlight what they know, what they're familiar with, or what they think is going to have a sort of impact. And I think that you know, with the 2 movies you just mentioned, that's, you know, we haven't had a lot of movies that show the brilliance of Black women on the screen. And just with these 2 movies alone, you've seen this incredible social media impact. Like, people are so excited about these movies, and I think that's something Elizabeth and I are just really excited about, obviously with our own, because we took such a big chance, Elizabeth especially, because she wrote the check to make this movie. But, you know, it's the fact that we've got such an amazing sort of you know, impact so far, and people haven't seen the movie, is really big for Hollywood. And that's why it's really important to see movies the first weekend when they come out, because that's what sends the message to Hollywood to make more movies like that, which I never knew. And not until coming into the business, I was like, oh wow, you know, I'm always like, oh, it's gonna be crowded the first weekend. No, you have to go the first weekend or that first week, because if not, that's the only way Hollywood will know to make these movies. So it's really important that we support them. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
No, I think that one of the movies I worked on in my career that was for me a seminal experience was Waiting to Exhale. And subsequently, How Stella Got Her Groove Back. And so I had, obviously, a wonderful relationship with Terry McMillan, but for me, that movie was so seminal because it showed African-American women. For me, it broke all color lines. It was like, we all have the same emotions. These are women that were drinking Chardonnay, burning their ex-husband's car up, you know, but they were wearing great clothes. They weren't in jobs that were subservient. They weren't in underprivileged situations. And I just felt like it was like, we are all the same. And I just want to keep that tradition up. And for me, that's what Hidden Figures was as well, because it was people that had dreams. I mean, Octavia Spencer's character plays a woman who is doing a job she's not recognized for, she's not being paid for. And you know what? She saw them bring in that IBM supercomputer, and she knew that if she didn't learn how to do that computer language, she and all the women that worked under her were going to be out of jobs. So she went to the library, and she had to actually kind of lift a book out of the white section and take it home to learn the Fortran's language so she could teach herself how to be a computer programmer. And she taught all of her women, and they all hired them. And they were the first computer programmers at NASA. And so for me, how about that for empowerment? And I think, you know what, that's what we need to do.
Amazing, yes. So, is this mic on? Yes, so there's a gentleman in the back who had his hand up. I saw him next. And so we'll try to, I don't know where my timekeeper is. We'll just try to go really quickly. There are a lot of questions I see, so.
Question and comment real quick. Donnie Perkins, Chief Diversity Officer for the College of Engineering at The Ohio State University. Just a comment, like both panels, would encourage adding, we need faculty members as well. So add that consideration to women of all colors, because that's where the images are formulated so that they can sit on that panel.
Thank you. So there's a sister here in the front.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shanera Ramsey, and I'm sort of in one person, the arts and the science. So I have an album coming out tomorrow. I'm a jazz, neo-soul, gospel artist, and I'm also a doctoral level neuroscientist. And I spent most of my life hiding those two sides of myself from each other, because in science, I was considered unfocused for being a musician, and in music, I was considered a nerd for being a scientist. So what I do when I go around and give workshops and seminars, the first thing I say is,
or your comment? So because we have a lot of
okay,
people.
and my
so
question
ask the
is,
question.
my question is, can we do a better job at providing commercials, TV shows that show regular people of color doing science so that I don't have to go around proving to people that you can be regular and cool and attractive and be a scientist and also be a musician? Can we do something about that in media?
Well, I can actually take that question. So the work that I am currently doing at the White House is focused precisely on that. So we are doing this by working on or doing events. We've had events out in LA, we've done roundtables. Actually, at the United States of Women Summit, we announced a commitment that was made by the Alliance for Family Entertainment, which is a daughter group of the Association of National Advertisers. So basically, this group is taking on this issue of the underrepresentation of women, not just underrepresentation, but the types of things you see women doing. And so, of course, we are working with them on ensuring that STEM is very much a part of what they're going to leverage their power for as advertisers. And so this is what we're working on. The administration views this thing you precisely just outlined as a very critical part of all of our efforts to foster STEM inclusion. And so I will share that the response has been tremendous from the community. I've had different conversations with showrunners, people, when you tell them that there is this problem and that they can be a really critical part of the solution, and that it doesn't take creating a whole brand new TV show, but just putting something in the content you already have, then they've been really receptive. So all that said, we're working on it, and I'm really optimistic that we'll start to see this in the next a few years even, where we will see more characters and also more diverse people as well. So gentleman standing in the middle there.
Good afternoon. My name is Reginald Reddy, and I have a question that's more geared towards women of color who are already in their chosen STEM fields. What are some of your strategies that your organization or company or agency have used to keep women of color in their respective STEM career choice? Thank you.
So it's a challenge, and I will say I know a lot of people focus on pipeline, and pipeline is clearly critical. There's no denying that. I think actually Barbara, who's now left, talked about it, and somebody else I think on the other panel did too, which is it is about creating an environment, fostering a place where you can be happy, be comfortable, bring your whole self to work, and actually not feel completely alone and alienated all the time. That's hard. I used to work in Silicon Valley. I don't anymore. And I kept getting promoted. I worked for a publicly traded company that had a real product, that had a real audience, that was profitable, and I couldn't stand to be out there anymore in that kind of environment. Part of the reason I went to work for BET, it was the first time in 20 years, my entire career, where I had had either a black person or a female anywhere in the chain above me. And so that is, I think, what it takes. It actually it is about changing the culture, changing the environment, creating allies within the community, actually in the organization, and helping them, so it's not on us, just to be clear, but getting those organizations to actually embrace and value different things. We bring different things to the table. We look different, we feel different, we respond differently to things. And in software, you actually know that different perspectives actually coalesce better and make better product. And that is exactly true also when you bring your staff, your team members into work.
May I add one just real quick? I would add, at NASA, we are really big on employee engagement, which means you talk to the employees, and diversity and inclusion is critical. I'm the diversity and inclusion champion at the agency. The most important part of those two is inclusion. People have got to know that they can have an idea, they can bring it forward, and people will listen to it and act on it. They may say no, but at least it's got to be listened to. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to retain anybody, men or women.
So there's a question here. So our microphone runner there.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Two things. Allison, I would love to get some of your research. I would love to read it. I run a small nonprofit in Miami. It's called Girl Power. And this past summer, I've done 2 STEAM camps for the summer. And I would like you guys to talk about how nonprofits can interface with the for-profit sector to fund these types of programs in the inner city where there's not a lot of funding for it because it's not done in the public school system?
So I'd be happy to talk to you more offline. I think the number one thing is that we've seen, we're out in Silicon Valley, so it's a little different, but the number one thing we've seen is that companies are really trying to figure out what to do now. So coming to them with some ideas, opening the conversation, and I think going back to the evidence base, the more you can try to document the effectiveness of programs, I think that also speaks volumes. Even if it's something like, we found our students are really motivated, interested, want to pursue this again. That's data that you can use to continue to advocate for more resources. But I'm happy to talk to you more offline about that.
Any questions from this side of the room, over here? Yes.
My name is Tracy Austin. I'm from Chicago, and I have a PR firm. But what we did about 10 years ago was recreate an opportunity for African American kids in our school district to learn about their history, because there is no African American history being taught in the schools, as you are aware. Once a year, 1 month, if that. But through our focus groups, it was clear that they didn't understand who even King is. So if you are a teacher that is in the school district with African American children and you are under 30, the chances, if you didn't go to an historical black college, you don't know your history either, unless there was a grandmother, some kind of history being taught. We have a curriculum. It is in the Chicago school districts. It is also in LAUSD. And we actually, LAUSD really made us kind of put a multicultural twist on it. So I'd like to know, how do we infiltrate this curriculum that really highlights STEM? There's a STEM in the curriculum is K through 12, but and it's divided for K through 8, and then of course the high school is a lot more rigorous. But we have a STEM project, and in there it opens up with Banneker, and then it just explodes into everything that you can imagine. How do you get that passed? How do we elevate that within California? Because it seems to be so difficult. Chicago, Atlanta, they get it. California is a different beast. Can somebody tell me what's happening?
Okay.
For our educators in the
Yeah, I guess.
Department of Education educators.
Well, no, I was just thinking, well, one way is just, as I say, just talking about these different stories of just not necessarily mathematicians, but scientists just in general. So I think, for example, was it Garrett A. Morgan, black guy? Probably not many people know this. He invented the traffic light. And the first traffic light appeared in Cleveland, Ohio. He also helped invent the seat belt and a lot of other things we use today. So stories like that I learned as a kid, because my mother basically said when I was going to school, she was like, well, you learn all this other history, you should sit down and read some about what black folks did. So my mother was proactive about that. But I would just say those sorts of stories that, like I said, not necessarily math, but just all sorts of engineering, like Carver, the peanut, and all the things he did with peanuts, and basically peanut butter, all these things we know today came from a black guy. So yeah. Percy Julian, there's
great. Thank you. So, well, we actually have to keep going, and unfortunately, Administrator Bolden has a hard stop and actually needs to leave. So,
I want to listen to one more. I got it.
Oh,
keep going.
We can do a little
Keep
more.
going.
Okay, I got the signal like, hey, you gotta go. Be respectful now. We can do one more question, and then you can. So we'll do one more question.
I just want to hear. It doesn't have to be my question.
Okay, so we'll take one more question, and then I also want to give closing thoughts, like an opportunity for the panel to give a quick closing thought. And I also want to tell people, don't go anywhere. If you didn't see the clip of Hidden Figures that we showed at the beginning, we will show it at the end. So stay put. So one more question from the audience, and then we're going to get closing thoughts from the group. Yes. She's about to jump and get the microphone.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is LaTanya Pagis. I'm a proud graduate of Howard University. Doctor, I'm sorry I didn't get your name from Morehouse.
Horn?
Dr. Warren, so now that this door is open with the entertainment industry and you as a mathematician, I actually too am physics and mathematics and, from Howard. But I think this is a great opportunity to combine what NASA's doing, which I've worked at NASA as well, at the Goddard Greenbelt site. How about we combine this now? Let's make the STEAM, take it off of the paper, and let's create a collaboration. You'll already have done it, so let's open up to all the HBCUs. So you all are positions of power, you have the ability to make the decisions, so what can you do to keep this critical mass going, and let's make it happen for the next generation?
There's a thing called mentor-protege programs that we use in business, so we require our large businesses in contracts to pick up a small business and mentor them. So it's a mentor-protege program. Donald James is the head of our education department over here, and he and the head of our small business office got together and decided we could transfer that to educating the HBCUs. Grants are great. NASA gives lots of grants to HBCUs. You don't get a lot of money out of a grant. You need a contract. And HBCUs, as a general rule, don't know how to contract. They don't have a contracting office. University of Colorado Boulder, Georgia Tech, they contract, they build satellites. And so we have a mentor-protege program where we're trying to reach down to HBCUs and help them learn how you get into the business of contracting, because it allows your students, undergrads, to get involved with grads who are working on things like satellites or whatever else you're talking about. So you can, I'd encourage you to talk to Donald. Yeah. Oh man, we'd be gone.
Well, one thing I'll also add, I know, so CBS, I believe, is already starting to do work where they are going out and they have like a college tour that they started where they're actually going to HBCU. So we're starting to see this already begin to happen, where these collaborations between higher education institutions that serve minorities and the entertainment industry. So I think it's just a matter of ideas exchange and also making people more aware that this is happening and that these opportunities exist. So with that, I want to give our panel a chance to have a few closing thoughts before we wrap, and also show the clip from the amazing Hidden Figures film again. So, and I just want to keep this free form, like fluid, like whatever you're feeling. Like, what do you want people to come away with? We talked a lot about the importance of media and images. There are a lot of positive things that are starting to happen. One of the things that I didn't share at the beginning was the stats. So the Gina Davis Institute shared research on, when you look at representation of STEM professionals in film in particular, men outpace women 5 to 1. So, and when you look at representation of people who are portrayed as computer scientists and engineers, it's 14 to 1. So, and it's astounding, right? This is how we're normalizing inequality even in the stories that we're telling. And so with that in mind, with this amazing thing that's happening with this magical project with Hidden Figures, what do you want this audience to come away with in terms of either the importance of media or the things that are happening, or just the work that you're doing, or just a piece of advice that people can go away with in terms of what they can do to help be a part of the solution to this pressing challenge with diversity in STEM?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how inspired I am by all of you and by all of you in the audience. And I think for me, this inspiration will channel into furthering our internship program. And I think if people can put the word out, if all of you can, and let these young people know that there are internships available. Our company, 20th Century Fox, has paid internships. And if we don't exactly have room for as many people as we would need to within our own division, we try and find other areas within the studio that they can work in. And that includes production and animation and all these different areas that can inspire them, give them something on their resume. And for us, a lot of these young interns have come back after they've graduated from college and gotten jobs as assistants, and their careers have blossomed. And a couple of them are presidents of divisions right now. So I think it's just putting the word out there that there are a lot of companies in this country that welcome young people of diversity, young people with inquiring minds, and that they will be given a chance to get in there and do the work and learn the work and be inspired by people that are already doing it. So I think that communication is probably, for me, the #1 thing about that.
Well, let's see. I'm a girl from the projects, a media executive now for over 20 years. I've made such a commitment to storytelling, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I can tell a great story, but it doesn't mean anything if we don't have the support. And a story like Hidden Figures, or from when I was an editor-in-chief of Vibe magazine with Quincy Jones, to the work I do now in Hollywood, it is really important to me to show amazing stories of people of color and the amazing things that we've done throughout history. And I just hope that I get the opportunity to continue to do it, and I hope you guys will support it.
And we thank you for that. I guess for me, the takeaway really is to think creatively about what it means to be in STEM. As we think about, again, I know this whole conversation is really about media and entertainment, but if you look at the impact that technology has had on that, if you look at what iTunes did to the music industry, if you look at what YouTube has done to the entertainment industry. So is Twitter a tech company or a media company? Is Facebook? Is Snapchat? So for me, it really is just about thinking outside of the box and thinking creatively, and that STEM is everywhere and is everything now.
So quick thought I just want to leave everyone with. So we are all, I'm super honored to be on this panel. We're all bringing very different perspectives. So I think the same thing can translate to the audience. Like, everyone is in this from a slightly different perspective or angle or profession. And I think just being clear that walking away today, like, we're clear about what the problems are. So everybody has the opportunity to do something about the solution, whether it's as a parent, whether it's as where you want to put your money, your entertainment dollars, whether it's what you advocate for in your community, whether it's how you teach children. Anyone in this room, I guarantee, has something that they can do to help with this issue.
Real quick, let's not forget about young black boys. Third grade is about it, and if we don't catch them then, they're done. So I think everything we talk about for women, we need to remember that's applicable to young men of color. Do not be afraid to tell them, do not be afraid to fail. Ron reminded me, I didn't apply it because I was afraid that I wouldn't get selected. Do not be afraid to fail. Ask questions, and whatever you do, don't waste your time trying to explain to somebody why you're in the room. Just do your job, and then, do it.
I'm just going to echo two sentiments. Yours about doing your job. Just do your job. And one that the lady said in the last panel, just following your passions and going for it. And you can do this. I mean, the mathematics, I know, I study a field that a lot of people deem very difficult. But you can do this. It's a matter of just persevering. And sometimes you'll fail, and other times you'll get excited about solving problems. There is nothing like being able to solve a math problem. It's pretty cool feeling. I won't lie.
Thank you. So please join me in thanking this amazing panel again. And I believe, so if you would like to say, you can, but I think we're going to show the clip one more time of Hidden Figures. So if you want to see the clip, please stick around. And if not, I believe that is the end of this session.